Hello, fellow geeks out there. It's that time again to listen to a podcast from the Geekcast Radio Network.
Today on episode 64 of the Cinema Geeks,
we react to new Spectre trailer.
We discuss the 23rd and 24th live-action Disney adaptation.
We talk about who may be showing up in Star Wars Episode 8.
And in our main attraction, we discuss the last of Phase 2 for Marvel, Ant-Man.
All that and more coming up on episode 64 with the Cinema Geeks. That's right, it is episode 64 of the Cinema Geeks, and for those of you who are new to the show, we are the Geekcast Radio Network's movie news podcast, and the structure and format of the show is somewhat reminiscent of a trip to the movies. So just to kind of give you a glimpse ahead of what to expect from the podcast, we start at the box office, where you would start any trip there, and we talk about the highlights from the past weekend of the box office, and we look ahead to the next weekend, and we do some fun box office predictions along the way. And then as we make our way to the concession stands or to our seats, we do what everybody does at the movies. We talk about movie news, and could be castings, remakes, reboots, anything that's new and noteworthy in the world of movies. And then once we find our way to our seat, we get to the trailer talk time. Some people's favorite part of their movie-going experience and some people's least favorite. So during the trailer talk section, we'll each give a yay or nay for a trailer that came out during the past week. And then when the lights dim, it's finally time for the main attraction. And the main attraction at Cinema Geeks could be a number of different things. At times we do a regular movie review in a movie that's in the theater, like we will be doing today with Ant-Man. Sometimes we play movie games like we did last week with What Made More on the Box Office Showdown. And it could be actor spotlights or any other type of general discussion. We've had discussions on originality in film and a number of different other things. And then once the film's over, it's time for the end credit scenes or the credit conversation, where we talk about what we've been watching, anything that's coming attractions as far as DVDs and theater releases. And then we usually end every show with a question for the listeners, and based on something that we discussed during the episode. So that's kind of the format for the show. But before we can make our way to the box office, we have to answer the all-important question when you're going to the movies, and that is, who are you going with? And today with me is Movie Revolt Dan. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Not too bad. And Hard Candy Mandy. Hello.
Hello.
And, of course, I am Optimus Solo, your other Cinema Geek here today. And let's get right into it. Let's get into the box office. We all had predictions from last week. Dan, let's start with you, because you were definitely right with your prediction. And what was that from last week?
I said that Ant-Man would be the lowest Marvel opening since, I think, the original Thor. And it was. It at least make less than $70 million, and it made less than 60. So maybe I was a little weak with my prediction. Maybe I could have gone down a little further. So it still was number one. That wasn't really a surprise, but it did okay. You know, it wasn't fantastic. It made half its budget back in one weekend. So it's nothing to, it's not a bomb by any means, but certainly not the level you expect for Marvel compared to what, Guardians and Avengers and all that.
Yeah, definitely with, we had when Guardians came out, that was kind of unknown territory, and we didn't know how that was going to go. Ant-Man had a similar vibe to it heading up to it, but it didn't quite have the same effect that Guardians did when it came out. Amanda, what was your prediction from last week?
I can't really remember. I know that I wanted Gallows to go down.
You were taking out some anger on Gallows, I remember that.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was the top 5 or top 10. I want to say it was the top 10. I wanted it out of the top 10. I don't know if it had something to do with Trainwreck or just the Gallows in general, so I don't think I was right in whatever, I guess.
All right, so confident prediction from last week that she remembers very well. Gallows came in at number 8, so if you were predicting that it was going to fall out of the top 10, you were wrong. But we'll have to go back and review the tape so we can get a final ruling on whether you were right or wrong. And I was just plain foolish and made way too many predictions. I predicted that Minions would pass the 200 million mark, Inside Out would pass the 300 million mark, Jurassic World would pass the 600 million mark. All of those things happened, but then I just kept talking, and that's where I ran into some problems because I said that Box Office Mojo keeps a total of the top 12 every weekend, and the sum total of all of those films, and only one time this year it has passed the 250 million mark, and I said it was going to happen for the second time, and it was not even close. I thought with Ant-Man, Minions, Trainwreck, Inside Out, Jurassic World that maybe we'd have some money makers there, but most of them underperformed slightly, with the exception of probably Minions, and Trainwreck was pretty close to what I thought it was, but it didn't even break the 200 million mark, so I guess I'm wrong with my prediction since I added that last part. So, my fault. Lesson learned.
Got a little ambitious there. So
I was afraid that the other ones were going to be too easy, and they actually all happened like before the episode went live, I think. So I forget when sometimes when we're looking at the weekend totals, it gives you like the total gross, but then doesn't count like the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday numbers.
Yeah.
So I need to pay attention to that a little bit more. So looking ahead to this next week, we have a few films that'll be hitting the theater that will play into the box office. We have Pixels. We have Southpaw. We have some more limited releases, possibly in some areas with Paper Towns, the Vatican Tapes, etc. So looking ahead to next week, Dan, what are you thinking based on this last weekend? What are you looking at?
I'm thinking, Pixels is getting like awful reviews, and Adam Sandler films are not what they once were. So I'm actually going to predict that Ant-Man stays number 1 for 2 weeks in a row. It'll probably still drop a great deal, but I think maybe it's getting a little bit positive word of mouth. So, and I think people are still who were maybe hesitant to go to the first time may end up going to it next weekend. So I'm going to say it stays number 1 with Pixels coming in at number 2.
All right, good prediction there. I think I'd support that prediction. Amanda, what do you got?
I'm not too far off, Dan. I'm going to go to the opposite end of the top 5, though, and say that Jurassic World gets dropped out of the top 5, and Pixels comes in at number 3.
Pixels number 3, Jurassic World out of the top 5. You're making possibly the same mistake I did. You're maybe
making the lead.
Making too many predictions. All right, I'm going to be along the same lines as what Dan was saying with Pixels not having a super successful opening, and I'm going to go ahead and say that there's no movie this next weekend that makes over 30 million.
Wow, yeah. Slow weekend then, huh?
Yeah, I'm going to say with everything is 30 and below 30. So we'll see. I'll be wrong because Minions will somehow make like 50 more million. But what can you do? All right. So outside of that, was there any other surprises or noteworthy things that you guys saw at the box office this weekend, Dan? Anything that
well, Jurassic Park is now the 3rd biggest film of all time, box office wise. So that's kind of notable, I guess. We should.
Yeah, it took out the other Avengers film. So
I know. It's a little bit insane, and when we talked about this in the news, but they greenlight the sequel already, of course.
What?
I know. Which is Jurassic World 2, which just sounds weird. It's like
they couldn't come up with anything better than that. Yeah. And I guess the big question is, will the text Jurassic World, will the S's be replaced with dollar signs?
Well, I think the T-Rex next one will have a grill, so if that's
or at least a chain of some sort. But yeah, that's crazy. And of course, all those milestones did hit. So Inside Out is currently the highest ranking animated film, but I think Minions is going to track it down here in relatively short fashion. Looking at the yearly totals, we haven't done that, I don't think, in a few weeks. So if you're looking at 2015 right now, obviously Jurassic World is number 1, Avengers still at number 2, Furious 7 still holding on to that 3rd spot, but Inside Out is only about 40 million behind it, so possibly could do that by the end of its run. Then Minions rounds up the top 5 at 234 million, so it's less than 100 million away from Inside Out in just, 2 weeks? 3 weeks? So we'll have to see if the animated films can take out Furious 7 sometime here in heading into August. So, all right, that does it for the box office. Let's get into the news stories here, and we'll do some thumbs up, thumbs down like we normally do. Give everybody a chance to weigh in on what they think of these various news stories. So let's just get this first one out of the way so we don't have to talk about it the rest of the podcast. And please, Disney, stop so we don't have to talk about this every week. I don't know what number they're up to yet, but we've had 2 announcements over the last week of live-action Disney film adaptations that will be added to the list, and I think we're at either 10 or 11 so far that have been announced over the course of this year. Is that, before we even get to which ones are connected to these 2 news stories, Dan, is this just getting ridiculous?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's been ridiculous since Alice in Wonderland came out, so yeah.
But has any studio ever tried to make this many announcements in a year?
I guess when you're Disney and you just own everything, I would maybe not.
Man, I don't know. I mean, Amanda, you're a huge Disney person. You love your Disney films.
I do.
Is it getting to the point where even for you this might be a little overboard?
Fuck no. Bring them on. I want to see all of them.
All right.
And I'm excited, except for Dumbo.
Leave out Dumbo. Bring on all the rest, she says. I don't know. I can't get on board with that. I can get on board with some of them, but let's get the first one out of the way, and that would be an article about Disney remake of Sword in the Stone. And another reason why this one's getting even more buzz is because there is a Game of Thrones writer attached to this remake. Dan, thumbs up or thumbs down to Game of Thrones writer signing up for a remake of Sword in the Stone? Which
is funny because it's like, it's a King Arthur story. It's not like, you know what I mean? It's like, that's not the, alright, whatever.
How can you have a remake of something that's based on something?
Yeah, it's like it's like, oh yeah, Disney, who created King Arthur. It's like, no, that didn't, alright, whatever. Of all the Disney live action films, I think it makes the most sense, honestly, because that, it is based in more of a reality because it's King Arthur. So I would think, compared to some of the other ones, like a Dumbo live action film, I would think it would at least be a little bit easier to control and make. So, but I never Sword in the Stone is not one that I'm particularly fond of. I mean, I like it, but it's it's like middle of the road for Disney for me. So I'll go thumbs down, just because I don't really think I have any interest in watching it.
Yes, I'm with you. Sword of Stone is not one of my favorite Disney films, and is Disney just going to do this to try to have a competitor for the King Arthur live action films that whoever is doing that we talked about months and months ago?
Looking at the kid version. I'd rather see a remake of Kid in King Arthur's Court, but that's just me.
There you go. And, of course, the Game of Thrones writer attached to this, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, he wrote the episode from this last season, Unbowed, Unbent, Unbroken, which caused quite a bit of stir. So that's an interesting leap, going from that to kid-friendly, family-friendly material. So I don't know. I'm going to give this one a thumbs down, too, but mainly based on the whole Sword and Stone being the one that's connected to it, and I never really liked that film overall to begin with. So, thumbs down for me. Amanda, Sword and Stone.
I don't think I ever saw the Sword and Stone.
Confessions.
But that was a pretty good episode of Game of Thrones, and
I don't think it's going to be like that.
I don't think it'll be like that, but all nudity aside, I think that it could be. I think it'd be better probably than the animated version.
All right, so thumbs up.
At least say that. I'm going to say thumbs up, better than Dumbo.
All right, so one thumb up for Sword and Stone remake. The other Disney film in headlines this week was, of course, a live-action Aladdin prequel on the way at Disney. So this one would be called Genies, and it would be set in the realm of the genies and kind of go into all of that, which would then set up for future films, etc. I got to start here because the part of this article that makes me laugh is in the last part of the article, one of Disney's biggest tasks, and I quote, will be to find a voice actor who can follow in the footsteps of Robin Williams. Apparently, whoever wrote this article has never seen any other Aladdin stuff that ever happened where Dan Castellaneta almost perfectly imitates Robin Williams in the animated series, in one of the sequel movies. I don't know, that doesn't seem like it's that big of a task. I mean, I understand Robin Williams is someone hard to kind of clone, but as far as the voice work, it's already been done before, so I don't think they'd have to look too far. But I'm a huge fan of Aladdin. I think the genie is one of the best animated characters of all time, probably. And if this was the only Disney live-action story we were talking about, I would probably be all for this. But when it comes in at like the 11th or 12th announcement of the year of this type of stuff, I'm starting to get a little nervous. But I will give this one a mild thumbs up just because I love the world of Aladdin. What about you, Dan?
And I get what you're saying performance-wise. I guess the issue is just that it's the idea of, like, that's so tied to Robin Williams, and he's considering what happened to him. It feels like it's like a little empty knowing it's not him.
I get that, but I think if someone watched like the animated series of Aladdin, I don't even know if they would know that that's not Robin Williams.
Yeah, I watched that, but it's been a really long time. But there's still only one Robin Williams, and maybe just the creativity he brought to it may not be there.
That's true. The improv and all that type of stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. Similar to Sword in the Stone, again, this is one that seems a little bit more sense. I guess I'd be more interested in it if it was more Aladdin than Genie. I like the Genie character, but I don't think he would maybe work as his own film. I don't know how you make a Genie movie. It just seems odd to me.
It seems like that would be something that would work even on an animated scale.
It seems if you're going to go live action, why are you making a movie that's going to be like all CGI anyway? So it seems like counterproductive to what you're doing. Yeah. So I'll go thumbs down because I love Aladdin. It's definitely my all-time favorite Disney movie. And if this was like more about that character of Aladdin, I would be all for it. But I don't know if I see it working as a Genie movie.
All right, so we're split on that one so far, even though mine was only a mild thumbs up. So Amanda, break the tie. What are you thinking for Genie?
I'm going to do a solid thumbs up because I think seeing the realm, set in the realm of genies, that's just intriguing to me, and I want to see that. And it does say that they're doing a long-term plan to lead into a live-action adaptation of Aladdin. So I think this would be a pretty cool prequel, and I'm interested to see how they pull it off.
All right, so all positivity from Hard Candy Mandy so far. Let's see if that trend continues. Getting into some Lego movie type news. I don't know how many people are aware, but obviously there's going to be a Lego Batman film, and I guess I'm more interested in your guys' thumbs up or thumbs down on just the whole premise of the Lego Batman film, but the article specifically this week is talking about some of the voice casting, and that would be Will Arnett returning or reprising the role of, obviously, Batman, and then Michael Cera voicing Robin in this film. So, Dan, you can touch on the voice acting if you'd like, but what is your general feeling on the Lego Batman film, and is getting a thumbs up or a thumbs down from you?
I might be more excited for Lego Batman than real Batman. He was a lot of fun in the Lego movie. When I hear they're making a Lego Batman, part of me thinks, is it like a direct-to-DVD movie or something like that? It just maybe it'll work. I think what was great about the Lego movie was just the huge ensemble of different characters. So if it doesn't have that, maybe it won't be as good. If it's just like a DC animated movie but with Legos, I don't know. I've never really played the games, but I've heard good things. With the voice casting, what I think is funny about this is that every movie news site I saw was like Michael Cera to play Robin, and they just stopped there because I know that's just going to cause people to come and click on their article because they're going to, what do you mean he's playing Robin? This is ridiculous. Oh, it's voice acting. But I think it works because I think, Jonah Hill as Green Lantern and Channing Tatum as Superman. So I think as a comedic voice for that character, I think it would be kind of funny. I would never want him to play live action Robin, but for Lego Robin, it's fine.
All right, so a thumbs up for Dan. This definitely will please one of the Geekcast Radio Network members because the problem he had with the Lego movie of last year was the fact that it didn't focus on the property characters, which most of us enjoyed the fact that it didn't, but obviously TFG and Mike wanted the Batmans or the whatever other Lego property characters to be in the focus. So maybe he's super excited about this, but I don't want to speak for him. He'll have to comment on the episode post. Amanda, what do you think about Lego Batman?
I think he was one of the most fun characters in the Lego movie, and I'd be interested in seeing his own solo movie. And as far as Robin goes, Michael Cera, all I can think about when I think about Michael Cera now is that bathroom scene from This Is the End when he's drinking the juice box.
Jeez.
So
that's a visual.
I just can't.
I don't think any homages to that will make it into this film. Oh man. Thanks for putting that picture in my head.
You're welcome.
All right, let's move on. get away from that. More Alien concept art revealed from Neil Blomkamp. Obviously, he made a lot of headlines the first time he sent out pictures involving this franchise, which led him to obviously be involved in it specifically. And now he sent out another picture or a sketch about some of the concept art for the film. Dan, are you nervous by this? Is this making you more excited, or does this really have no impact whatsoever on your feelings about this next Aliens film?
I think it looks fitting for Alien. I mean, it looks like Alien. Honestly, if you gave me that, instead it was concept art for the first or second film, I'd be like, yeah, it makes sense. So I think it's fitting. I think he is clearly a fan of this franchise, and he has a respect for it. So there's no doubt that he comes in with a knowledge base. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But to me, the original concept art he had was really cool. I liked it. I don't know how it's going to work in a movie, but it's not like, what are we going to get, another bad Alien movie? What do you have, 2 of them? So what's going to happen?
It's got to break the tie or something, right?
Yeah.
Amanda, what do you think about this concept art and the whole idea of this next Alien film?
I don't know too much about what's going on, but I think Blomkamp does a really awesome job of anything sci-fi, especially what he does with aliens and life on other planets and anything cool of that nature, creating characters and whatnot. I think he does a good job. So I'm interested to see what this is going to look like. I like the Alien movies, not as much as the Predator movies, but I think the Alien versus Predator movies are pretty sweet. So I was going to say...
We're not even getting into the back and forth that's going on about those other films between Sigourney Weaver and the writers of those films, but they're having all kinds of internet feuds going on with that. But
Nicki Minaj versus Taylor Swift style.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Just look it up.
Okay, I'll look it up after the show. Yeah, I'm all for this. I'm for the fact that obviously Blomkamp has a passion for this world, and it seems like he's trying to do it justice. Like Dan said, it doesn't necessarily always equate to success, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I have not hated his films as much as some other people have, as far as Elysium and Chappie goes. So I'm still in his camp and giving him a fair shot. So thumbs up for me on that one. Moving on to something that will also tie into one of the trailers we might be talking about later on, but Sam Mendes says Spectre will be his final Bond film. Dan, thumbs up or thumbs down to him leaving the franchise?
It's mixed emotion, honestly, because I love Skyfall so much, and when we talk about Spectre, I'll give my thoughts on that. So I understand him wanting to do something else, of course, because I kind of like nearly everything he's done. I even, every movie, I don't think there's a movie he's made, I could be forgetting something off the top of my head. I even like Away We Go, and I know most people don't like that. Mm-hmm. But I will give it thumbs up, because I'd rather him leave and on a good note than, make one too many, like you see often happen. And I know it's hard enough to get him for the second film, so I'm all for seeing him do something else, I guess. I was hoping, though, we would get his James Bond trilogy. That may not happen, but yeah, I guess it's not necessarily, like I said, I'm mixed on it. I think I was looking forward to seeing more James Bond movies by him, but if he's not, his heart's not in it, then I think it would be good for him to step away. So.
Yeah, I definitely don't think he should do it if his heart's not in, or even if it might not even be that. It just might be the dedication of time that it takes, and his ability to maybe do a couple other things that he has on his bucket list of films that he might want to direct or something like that. But yeah, Sam Mendes' Bond trilogy definitely would have been cool to see. But I'm all for the drop the mic moment. Just make your 2 films, have them both kick ass, and then just walk away and let somebody else pick up the pieces or try to fill in the footsteps. Yeah,
sometimes you don't want to just get labeled like a genre director and now you can't do anything else, so that's all people expect for you. So maybe that's kind of his mindset on it. So
right. So as much as I like the marriage of him in this franchise, I'm going to be I'm going to give it a thumbs up, and I'm interested to see what else he does, because I'm a big Mendes fan as well. Amanda, what do you think? You haven't seen Skyfall, though, have you?
Nope, and I haven't seen Casino Royale either. Is that one he did?
No, he just did Skyfall.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I haven't seen that, so I can't comment.
Okay. All right, then moving into some comic book stuff, because it's always good to talk a lot about comic book movies when you're doing a show for something called the Geekcast Radio Network. So the Selma director, DuVernay, has said no to a role as far as the director of Black Panther. I don't think that necessarily that is the biggest news out of this article. The reason I wanted to include it this week is more so to go with why Ava is not going to be partaking in this. And the biggest thing here, for me, the biggest line was the suggestion that she would have had to compromise her own artistic integrity too much, and there was too much compromise involved for her to commit, because she felt like no matter what she did, it would not end up being her film. So, Dan, what's your reaction to that?
I can understand that, because you think about when we get into Ant-Man. I mean, thinking of Edgar Wright leaving that because he felt he was losing his vision for the movie. So, and when you're making a studio film like a Marvel movie, there's going to be a lot of parameters that are put upon you. So I completely understand why a director would not want to be within that. Like, I could think of, we're doing the Quentin Tarantino retrospective right now. If you try to put the same parameters on him, I don't think it would go over very well. So I get that.
So do you think that's is that just a factor of the fact that it's a big studio, Marvel / whatever franchise it is film, or is this a sign of somewhat of a problem within that universe? Even though they've had a lot of success and they've done a lot of good things as far as what they've set out to do, is this a chink in the armor or a criticism that can be kind of tossed over at the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that they're not allowing directors to be creative? I think
it is kind of a side effect of having this shared universe, where if all these movies are supposed to be connected, then how do you, if you have to kind of make them all work in some instance. You can't just you can't have one super stylized like Sin City and like something, then try to mix that with like a movie like Iron Man, and like those are so different. So I do think you do end up putting a lot of restraints on people because of it, which is why I think often the directors they get are those that haven't really done much yet. They're TV directors or those just trying to break into it. So I think that's when you're losing that. There have been times where I feel like they did allow directors a little bit more room. Movie comes to mind, it's like Iron Man 3. I felt like Shane Black's influence is certainly there. But, if you're a new director who's kind of off her biggest hit so far, I think her talents are probably better used elsewhere, honestly. I don't think that I think she could do a lot more than just follow the Marvel formula, because as we've seen, I think in a lot of ways the directors don't play a huge part for the most part. There's some exceptions, but yeah, I don't know what I'm even saying anymore, but yeah.
No, and I mean, I think we can see that even with the departure of Joss Whedon now, too, where he's distanced himself from this, and it's a lot of these bigger named, maybe more. Not as much to, like you said, they're not young directors just trying to prove that they can handle a film like this. They're people that are already established through their other films. So I mean, I think when you have some of these constraints, it becomes kind of a balancing act. And at what point is it too much?
Yeah.
Where
you can get lucky and get someone like the Russo brothers who clearly had a lot of talent, and they showed it in glimpses within TV episodes and things like that. So then when they had the opportunity, they ran with it. But sometimes if you keep banking on that happening, it may not always happen. So if you're eventually, I think when you get to a certain point, you're going to have to allow directors to take these characters in directions that they feel are fitting to their own style. And maybe that means that the universe isn't as connected as we currently have it, which I personally would be okay with. So I think maybe we'll see a little bit more changing when we get to Phase 3 or Phase 4, but as long as they're making millions of dollars, I don't think they're going to change what they're doing.
Right, yeah, it kind of comes to that point where a lot of people think, if you're doing something for an extended period of time and it's been successful, that you have to like reinvent the wheel, or you have to like start flipping things on their heads and whatnot and upside down, and they might do that, or they might just stay with the status quo, but then you'll have the same people that are going to be calling out for the Marvel fatigue if they don't get something different. So it's kind of a balancing act. You're probably damned if you do and damned if you don't. So be interesting to see what they do with Phase 3. Amanda, what do you think? You saw Selma. You liked that film. Do you think she would have been a fit for a Black Panther film, or are you glad she said no to this one?
I'm kind of glad that she said no. I understand her reasoning, and she probably doesn't want to be looped into something I don't think she can get behind, really. I mean, I don't feel like that's something that she can fully get behind. I think her motives are pure, and I think that she should take this time in her career to focus on things that she really feels like she can express herself through art in.
All right, fair enough. So I think we're all in agreement on that one. Moving on to the next news story. There are 3 rules here at the Cinema Geekcast, and so I called the Twitter name. There are 3 rules here with the Cinema Geeks, and that is every episode we must talk about comic book stuff, we must talk about reboots, and the third and final rule, of course, is we must always talk about Star Wars. I'm not serious, those are not rules, they just seem to come up every episode, and our Star Wars news story for this week is, of course, that none other than Benicio del Toro is being rumored to possibly landing a role for Star Wars Episode 8, possibly a villain role. Dan, obviously it's just rumors at this point, Episode 8 does not come out until 2017, but what do you think about the matchup between Del Toro and the Star Wars universe?
It's fitting, I guess. I mean, it's kind of a fanboy's wet dream in a lot of ways. So, yeah, I mean, I would be interested in seeing. When we just got done talking about Marvel, the question becomes with Star Wars, do you end up having a lot of the same issues? But seeing what they're doing with Star Wars, maybe there's a little bit more open space for it. But yeah, I mean, I'd be curious what he would do, like how he would do it. But I don't know. It seems like it's weird that they're going to have all these different directors. You would think they would try to keep some type of voices from one movie to the next, but it seems like they're just trying to get whoever they can.
Right, and seeing Del Toro as a villain possibly in Episode 8 would be interesting. I mean, I guess we last saw him as the Collector here in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and he's playing a different type of character. I almost think that someone that I think would be a real cool villain in the Star Wars universe would be Javier Bardem. I think that would work as a villain in this universe, but I can see Del Toro working as a villain too. It would be interesting if we have Del Toro as the villain in the next Star Wars film, Idris Elba as the next villain in the Star Trek film. It seems like they're really upping the ante as far as villains go, and maybe doing something in both of those worlds that Marvel seems to struggle with a little bit, which when it comes to like villains and stuff like that. So we'll have to see how these work out if this is in fact something that comes to fruition. Amanda, you like Del Toro. What do you think about him being a villain in the Star Wars universe?
I like Benicio del Toro in almost everything that I've seen him in. I have seen him in a couple sci-fi roles, including The Collector, and I don't know if you probably haven't seen The Wolfman, with him as the Wolfman, and I absolutely love that movie. I used to go to sleep watching that movie.
That's wrong.
It's not at all. I definitely like the turning scene when he becomes a werewolf in front of everybody. And I think that him as a villain is a great idea. Him as a Star Wars villain, I don't know. I don't know if I can really see him in that world, but if he's going to be there, I will be down to watch him.
All right. Moving on to some more comic book news, because we can't get enough of it, but not really comic book news as much as it is just a connection to a comic book film and more of a sci-fi film news, and that is the idea of a Logan's Run remake, and that being connected to the X-Men producers and Kinberg and Silver. I didn't even know they were doing a Logan's Run remake, nor have I seen Logan's Run, so
I don't even know what
I can't really comment too much on
this.
this. Dan, help us out. Have you seen Logan's Run?
I have. It's kind of like a sci-fi dystopian film where basically if once you get to a certain age, you kind of disappear. Basically, it's trying to think, maybe Lord of the Flies-esque or so, I don't know.
Gotcha.
They've been talking about doing a remake for it forever, honestly. At one point, I think Ryan Gosling was the star, and it's one of those movies that's been in development hell forever. So,
and the one thing we know about that from recent times is that usually does not bode well for the final product when it eventually is finally wrapped up and given to us. So, yeah, I think there's been like 17 different drafts for this film so far, it seems like. So, I don't know. I guess I'd have to watch for the first time the first one to even think if I would be interested. But at this point, can't really talk too much about it since I don't know anything about the property. So, is this something that needs to be remade, Dan?
Actually, I think it does have a good opportunity to be remade. I don't really love the first one all that much. The idea and concept is interesting. I think it's probably better. I think it's based off a novel, if I'm not mistaken, but it does not age all that well.
Gotcha.
You know, it's kind of a cheesy 70s science fiction film, so it's fun in that aspect. But I think if it kind of reminds me of like a Westworld, where I think there's a good idea there that they can kind of make into something a little bit more with today's technology.
All right, so we'll have to see what happens if that ever starts to gain some traction here. The last two news stories, the one I don't want to talk about all that much, we just will mention it, so we're not acting like we're not aware of it, but apparently Sony is going to be doing an emoji movie.
Oh, God.
I will go ahead and give this a thumbs down, and Dan, what about you?
You can't hear me, but I'm talking in emoji. I'm going to go with no. Love of God, no. Why? Like, why? Man.
This is just so sad.
I feel it's not real. Please don't. It feels like an Onion article. This can't be true.
It's just like, hey, the Lego movie worked. Let's do the Play-Doh movie, and let's do all these just random things about whatever popular toys or gimmicks or pop culture things are out there.
I feel like it should just be a TV show in Japan, and that's it.
I mean, will there be any audio in this, or will it just be visual?
I don't even...
This is terrible. Thumbs down from me. Dan, you're giving it a thumbs down. Amanda?
Don't sound so oddest. I have seen some deaf movies that have no audio in it. It's just all sign language.
What did you just call
me? An oddist. It's where you think that hearing people are better than deaf people.
I'm offended that you think that of me.
I'm giving
Never had that label before.
I thought it'd be someone who audits other people like that.
How dare you be such an auditor?
So you're giving it a thumbs down too?
I'm giving it a wicked thumbs down.
All right, 3 thumbs down from that. Go throw that in the trash heap, Sony. And the worst part about that is in the article it's talking about how it's not something that is protected by anything. It's public domain.
Yeah, like words.
Like words, so there's nothing stopping any studio from doing the exact same thing if they wanted to.
Except for Logic. That'd be the one thing.
Except for Logic. No, I think they're going to do the same thing that we did with, what's the Robin Hood we're getting 17 films for?
Yeah.
So we'll have 4 competing emoji films. That'll be fantastic, and the world will end shortly after that. Last one kind of ties in a little bit to the Ant-Man discussion. I think we'll save that one until we actually get to our main attraction, and then we can touch on that a little bit. So with that, let's get into some trailer talk for this last week. We had some interesting trailers. We had a new trailer, or a first trailer for Pam, Digging for Fire, the anticipated film from Inarritu, The Revenant. Before we go, an actual full-length trailer for The Good Dinosaur from Disney Pixar. Like we mentioned in the news story about Sam Mendes, a trailer for Spectre coming out shortly, as well as Mississippi Grind, and then a number of international or second trailers. So, Dan, I'll let you go first because that'll determine what I'm going to talk about. So, any of those trailers you want to give a yay or a nay for and talk about a little bit?
I think this has been a bad week for news, but a great week for trailers, actually.
Yes.
And we teased that I have to talk about it, and that's, of course, Spectre, and the second trailer. And I am super excited for this. And what I find really interesting about this movie is that for an action film, it's not really focusing a lot on the action in the trailer, which is maybe you made me think it's a bad thing, but I think it's a good thing. And I love the look of it. I was a little worried with Roger Deakins leaving and not coming back for Sam Mendes' second film, that it wouldn't be nearly as stylistic and the cinematography wouldn't be nearly as good, because that's one thing I loved about Skyfall. But what do? You get the cinematographer from Her and Interstellar, and that's a good, if you're going to go someplace else, that's a good place to go. I'm not going to pronounce his name because I can't, so I'm not even going to attempt to. But it doesn't necessarily have some of the more silhouette shots that we got from Skyfall. But I don't know. I think Christoph Waltz was born to be a Bond villain, so having him play what's clearly one of the most iconic Bond villains of all time is like the perfect marriage. and I'm super excited for it. So
I think just go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a huge thumbs up. So.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a huge yay as well, and I think just for the showdown between Daniel Craig and Christoph Waltz is going to be amazing. I don't remember who on the In Session Film podcast about, 4 or 5 months ago was saying that they couldn't buy, or they didn't think Christoph Waltz was going to be good in this role. I think it might have been Brendan, and I'm not quite sure what he was on that day, but like you said, I think this is something that Christoph Waltz is absolutely born or made for, and that's not just me spouting off because I loved him in a few previous roles. I think, like you're saying, he's meant to. He perfectly fits a Bond villain. So I'm a huge yay as well. Amanda, I know you haven't seen Skyfall, but what did the trailer for Spectre do for you?
I don't think it distinguished itself from any other Bond film for me yet. I really can't get as excited as you guys were. I mean, I like Bond films. I enjoy them. I'm just not jumped out of my skin excited.
Yeah, I could understand that because it's not... It
doesn't give a lot away.
Yeah, and it's a lot of them do kind of run together, but I think it's more so, especially if you if you're a fan of the history of Bond, knowing they're bringing back Spectre, which was huge, one of the biggest villains within the Bond universe, which haven't been able to be used in the film since the 1960s. So bringing that back it's a big deal for some people, but I could get why people that aren't really familiar with it could probably care less.
Right.
I don't remember watching Bond films before the Pierce Brosnan ones. They came out, I think, when I was in elementary school. I think I was 8 or 9 when Die Another Day or whatever, or Goldeneye came out. Goldeneye. Something like that, and I've, kept track of them since then, but I don't know too much about, the Sean Connery Bond or anything like that. And then these last couple I haven't really caught up on, because like you said, they kind of have been running together for me since then.
All right, so we have homework for you. There's only how many films, Dan?
Oh, jeez. Over 23 now, 24, something like that, so...
And how dare a trailer not give away the movie these days? I mean, geez.
I didn't need it to give me.
No. I'm not saying away. You. I'm just saying it seems like every trailer this summer has been giving films away. And
you mean like Terminator Genesis?
Terminator Genesis, yeah. Even a little bit in the Southpaw trailer, I don't think was necessary. So I don't know, but yeah, I'm with you on that one. The big yay for me. What about you, Amanda? What trailer would you like to either yay or nay?
I think I might have already discussed this one because I feel like it's already come up, but I want to pick a yay for Pan. And I think it's just going to be a really great visual experience. If anything, I am seeing more and more just really cool visual aspects of this world that we're going to get to see more fleshed out in Neverland. And the prequel aspect, I think, hasn't been done before, and I'm gonna really be super excited when this comes out.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything that necessarily is rubbing me the wrong way with this one. I'm probably not quite as excited as you are for it, but for someone that's not huge into the Peter Pan lore and I guess whatever you want to call it, universe, this one has not done anything to turn me away. I guess I'll say it that way. So I would give it a mild yay for that trailer as well. Dan, what's your opinion on that one?
Yeah, it was better than I expected, honestly, because I had no interest in Pan whatsoever. But Hugh Jackman looks interesting, and like Amanda said, the visual style is a lot more intriguing than I thought it would be. I thought it'd be kind of bland, but they seem to trying to do new things with that universe. And I don't know, Captain Hook is a good guy. I guess we'll see where that goes, of course, but.
Well, like they said, how the roles are reversed. Yeah. Friends become enemies and enemies become friends. I think that'll be a cool scenario to see play out, how Hook becomes the Hook that we know. Yeah.
I'm just looking for Hugh Jackman to redeem himself after his ridiculous performance in Chappie.
Be a great villain without the khakis and the mullet.
Hey, when you have that facial hair, man, it's a good place to start. But
he looks wicked scary.
He's almost on. The first time I saw him in that, I almost was like, I thought Hugh Jackman was supposed to be playing this guy. Oh, okay, that is him. For me,
I get a real rapey vibe off him.
A rapey vibe? That's never good. That's never something you want to hear about yourself. All right. That's like the substitute English teacher in high school or something. I don't know. That's what I picture when that say rapey vibe. All right. The Good Dinosaur is the one I'll talk about because no one wants to hear me talk about The Revenant. No, I'm actually excited for The Revenant. But The Good Dinosaur, I am probably in the minority here, but I'm actually going to give that trailer a nay. I haven't seen anything about this film yet that has got me excited. I know it's supposed to be, I guess, feel good, or I don't know. I just don't see. I don't even see how this seems a lot more Disney to me and a lot less Pixar. I don't know which one's taking the lead in this. It's being billed as Disney Pixar, so I'm assuming that's more Disney. But I just can't see anything about the teaser, about the images, about the style, about the trailer that is getting me excited about this one, and I can't see. Maybe it'll surprise me, but I don't know. This is like the first Land Before Time with a little cave boy.
Hey, that's not a bad thing, you know.
But I even like the style of Land Before Time better than I like the style of this one, I guess. So I know I'm probably in the minority, but I'm going to give a nay for The Good Dinosaur. Dan, agree or disagree?
I'll say I definitely disagree. I could see the issue with the animation style because I do think it's very basic. It's almost just the style of the characters. There's not much detail to it, especially for a Pixar film, but I wonder if that's going to go into like just the design of that world, if it'll fit into that way. But I would say maybe the thing is that you're coming out of Inside Out, which was such a unique, different concept, and this one is more your kid and dog story or your kid and dinosaur story in this instance. And I don't think it'll be up to the upper level of Pixar, but maybe it'll be something like The Bug's Life or just more of the basic heartfelt story that maybe isn't as deep as some of the other stuff. But I'm excited for it. I agree it's probably more Disney than Pixar, but I think it'll be fine. And
whatever, Dan. I love Bug's Life.
I like Bug's Life too. I'm saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying just like it won't be Wall-E or Finding Nemo, or maybe it will be more like Finding Nemo or something like that.
I could see that a little. I got a little Finding Nemo vibe from that in just a different way, but I can see that connection. Amanda, what did you think of the trailer?
I really do not know if I care a whole lot about this movie yet. I think I was, in the trailer this time, I was really trying to focus on picking out something that I liked, and the rudimentary style of the animation, or the look of the dinosaurs, they just look like something, like kindergartners draw. And, they're just awkward, and the dinosaur reminds me of Marty, our kitten, because he's so small, but he's got, like, big feet. He just kind of, like, flops them around sometimes. And I saw some really cool stuff with the, everything but the dinosaur, how it looked, like the trees and the grass, and, when he's eating the grapes or whatever. And I think the gesture by the little cave boy was cute, so it might be a chance of the feels happening.
Might be a chance for the feels during The Good Dinosaur. All right, so those are the trailers that were released this last week, a couple that we didn't talk about. So if you wanted to talk about one we missed, or if you disagree or agree with our yay or our nay on the ones we did talk about, let us know on the website, geekcastradio.com, and find the episode post and comment there. We will definitely interact with you there. But as for now, we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to get into our main attraction, which this week, like we said in the opening, we're going to be discussing Marvel's last of its Phase 2 films, Ant-Man, coming up after the break.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Greg.
This is Chuck.
And this is Dan, and we are Talking in Circles.
Because the world needs another podcast, we are here as Geekcast Radio's newest edition.
And as the title says, each week we get lost in conversation about a wide range of topics, including movies, comics, games, art, TV, and even occasionally sports.
We play games and discuss pivotal topics like who would win in a fight, the Kool-Aid Man or Tony the Tiger, and examine the hot-button issues of the world of geekdom.
We keep things fresh by taking timeless topics in new directions.
We are simply three friends having a fun time talking about life's most fascinating foibles.
Stay connected with us every Tuesday on iTunes or at geekcastradio.com.
Hey guys, it's Optimus Solo and
Hard Candy Mandy.
And we just wanted to let you guys know about another podcast out there that we both think you would all enjoy.
It's one of both of our favorite shows to listen to, and it's none other than the True Bromance Podcast.
True Bromance is a movie podcast hosted by longtime friends Hyro and Barry, and if you like to smile, laugh, and just be genuinely entertained while listening to movie talk, then this is definitely the right show for you.
Each week, the guys break down a recently released movie, and not only do they tie in the movie that week to the beers that they are drinking during the show,
but they also tie it in to a real fun top and bottom 5 list associated with that movie.
It's a blast hearing both sides of these lists, and it definitely makes them unique amongst all other movie review podcasts.
So we definitely want to recommend all of you guys to go check out their show. Just search out the True Bromance Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and all other podcast platforms. And if you listen via iTunes, do us a favor and leave them a 5-star review. And don't forget to let them know that the Cinema Geeks sent you.
Now back to the show. Do you see how your patience paid off?
All right, thanks for sticking with us. As we said, it's time for the main attraction. It's time to get down and dirty with Ant-Man. And let's start with your initial reaction, Dan. What did you think about Ant-Man?
Well, I feel like with Marvel films, reviewing them is kind of like doing a Mad Libs, where a lot of the descriptors stay the same. It's just the nouns that are changing. It's like, it was, this movie had a bad villain, but blank was really fun, kind of thing. So in that vein, I does think it very much follows that very familiar Marvel formula, but I think there are a little bit of new elements it does incorporate. But honestly, at the end of the day, after watching it, there was something about Ant-Man I just found very charming and enjoyable. And I don't know if it's just because it's a really good palate cleanser from Avengers Age of Ultron, where it's simple and just this straightforward story that doesn't try to have world-ending stakes, but it's more personal and intimate, that I appreciated more. But I think it's not necessarily to the level of Marvel's greatest movies. It's not, Winter Soldier or Guardians of the Galaxy, I don't think. But I think at the end of the day, it did as well as you could for a character called Ant-Man. So I ended up really liking it. So
I'm going to bounce off of something you just said, because that's kind of where I was going with my thoughts is, you mentioned that it's not like one of Marvel's best films, and it's not one of Marvel's worst films. And that's kind of where I fall for this film. I'm going to fall on the positive side, but it's not something, it's like, it didn't fall on its face. It didn't do anything bad. It didn't do anything to piss me off. But it's not going to be one of those films that resonates with me to the level of some of their better films have been. You've mentioned Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, the first Avengers, possibly throwing that one into the mix. So I don't think it stands out where some of those stand out, but I still think it's a successful film, regardless of its slow opening at the box office. So I'm going to be somewhat positive on this one as well. Maybe, I don't know if I'll be as positive as you, but I'm somewhere right in that ballpark. What about you, Amanda?
I think that I like the point that Dan brought up, how the villain and the stakes in this movie were not completely world-changing and as heavy. I liked that the stakes were a little bit more contained, and it showed the level that it was on, how in the beginning he wasn't quite at Avengers level, but still he did get in a fight with an Avenger, if we're going to go into spoilers, and how that plays out we see. So I think that I liked the level that they kept it on for this movie, and I'm excited to see how they incorporate him into some bigger films.
Well, that's a perfect transition for me, because that's one of the items that I wanted to make sure we talked about today in discussing that film, and we can start with Dan and go around the table again. But as far as its interaction, or this film's interaction in the bigger Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Avengers references, or just how it fits in overall with the whole thing, Dan, how did you feel that angle worked for it?
Well, I thought, honestly, it worked pretty well. I'm usually against the idea of finding the need to tie it in to other things. That's why I kind of like Iron Man 3 so much, is because it doesn't do that really at all. And here we have a little bit, there's a little bit of a snide comment regarding falling cities, which I don't think you really needed that. I get, Paul Rudd making the joke, why don't we just call the Avengers? And maybe they could have just left it at that. But the surprise appearance of a character, honestly, if you told me that going into it, I'm like, oh, that's going to be so shoehorned in. And Maybe it is, but I think it makes sense, and it does feel like a comic book moment. you need to get this thing, and you need this thing to complete a job, and you're going into it, and it's like, oh no, there's an extra level, there's this character we have to deal with. And I thought it worked in how it was, again, it wasn't something that was dwelled on all that much after the fact, and I thought the sequence itself was a lot of fun, and I think it, for one, I think what it did too was just show us the character of Ant-Man could go toe-to-toe and does belong with the other Marvel characters. And even though he's not necessarily a namesake, he belongs on that team just as much as anyone else. So I ended up really enjoying that aspect of it, and so yeah.
I'm going to agree with you on that one as well. I think, like you said, it's not something that we need to see in all the different Marvel films. Like, every one of them does not need to make some type of reference or correlation to another film or characters in another film. I don't think that's necessary, but I think the way they handled it in this one worked fine. I think the character, I think the comment, I think all the different things that do tie into it for me work on this level. So I didn't have a problem with it here. I hope they don't necessarily feel like they have to do that in every single Phase 3 film, though. Amanda, what did you think?
As far as how they connected it,
yep.
I thought it was really, really well done. I think that the little remarks that I brought up, like you said, dropping cities, also the small little hints to other characters that we might be seeing or that we have already seen in the MCU, and the same little conversation about the city being dropped. I like that. I think that as in regards to where Daredevil stands, I think maybe it's just a slight step up from the level that Daredevil's at. I feel like Daredevil is more gritty, on the street, low level stuff that's still important. And then here's a step up, whereas it's Ant-Man, who's almost a connector, that he can go to these smaller scale operations, but he can also fit into the Avengers scale.
Right, and then of course you have more of the Avengers like Iron Man and whatnot, and then you have the level where you get to with Thor and kind of the otherworldly characters as well. So yeah, I can see that. Another item I wanted to touch on in regards to this film would be the comedy aspect, and whether it's the comedy aspect of the film overall, whether it's focusing on the other members of this heist outside of Ant-Man, including Michael Pena, T.I., etc. How did you feel the comedy worked in this film, and where do you think this stands in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Is it one of the funniest Marvel films we've had? Is it in the top, or do you think it's not nearly at that level? Amanda, let's start with you. Where do you think the humor and the comedy, how did it work for you in this film?
I think it worked really well. I did laugh, and I did really like the comedic support that was given by Michael Pena. I think he was probably my favorite character in this. And T.I., I know that he's been given a lot of shit for this role and kind of, called pointless or distracting or what have you, but I like T.I. Give me some little tip in a movie and I'll probably enjoy it. And I think that he...
you said give me a little what?
Tip.
Okay.
It's T.I., tip.
Gotcha.
I think that he held his own, and I think he worked.
Dan, what about you? How do you think the comedy worked in this film, and where would you place it as far as, is it one of the funnier Marvel films that we've had?
I don't think the comedy is maybe to the level of Guardians all that much. It's not as, I would say, as biting or edgy as that type of comedy, which it doesn't necessarily need to be. I've heard people say this is very family friendly for the most part, and I would agree with that. It does have a lot of kind of gags and like a lot of physical humor, which I think works. It makes sense when you're a character of Ant-Man, and I think they played well with the concept of him being really small, and there was a lot of good like panways and things like that. Like Amanda mentioned, Michael Pena is probably the best comic relief character Marvel has had. If you compare him to something like Kat Dennings in the Thor films, so much better. His comedy's a lot stronger, and like every time he was on screen, I ended up enjoying it. I thought, though, I almost thought it would be a little bit funnier, or I was surprised that Paul Rudd wasn't as smart-assy as he has been in the past, which maybe is a good choice, because maybe he wouldn't be a character you can get behind, and maybe he would be too much like Tony Stark in just a different suit or something like that. He was a little bit more of a straight man than I expected, and so that kind of, to me, makes it... I understand that choice, but it made me a little bit disappointed because I was just waiting for him to really be Paul Rudd, and he wasn't. But maybe that's, like I said, that could actually end up being a better thing. I do look forward to seeing him interact with other characters, like seeing him interact with a Captain America or a Tony Stark and how that works out. But I would say it's probably on the funnier end, like, you know, compared to the other Marvel movies, you know, funnier than Thor and whatnot. But I don't think it's the funniest Marvel movie yet.
Okay.
I agree with that. I don't think it's funnier than Thor's humor, and I also agree that Paul Rudd didn't go banana sandwich as Paul Rudd in this. He's a little bit calmed down. I think that's how they kind of made him look more like a family man, and more about that aspect than Tony Stark is kind of about himself.
Yeah. I mean, I liked his performance. I thought he did pretty well, and especially with a relationship with his daughter, I thought that was actually pretty strong. They didn't have a huge amount of screen time, but I thought they used the screen time that they did have and to show that connection. And the young actress, the young child actress, I thought was good too. So even though it wasn't the performance I was expecting, I think it still was pretty solid.
Yeah, I'll agree with what both of you guys have said. And the last thing I wanted to bring up before I turn it over to some points that you guys might want to bring up is getting into the villain, because we kind of touched on that very briefly. But the villain of Yellow Jacket and the performance and the inclusion of that villain and kind of how it compares to some of the other villains we've had in the Marvel films, I wanted to start by giving a quick thought on that. And my quick takeaway, like right after watching this film, was almost a disappointment in a way that we didn't get more of the Yellow Jacket, because literally you don't see that character as far as in its like full form and active until the last sequence of the film. And not saying that you have to have the villain throughout, but I almost would have liked to see him more in the villain role to kind of get a better glimpse of that, because I think he had potential as a villain. Like, I think Corey Stoll just as an actor was good, and his performance was good, and I think he was adequate in that role, but I almost would have liked to see him more as the Yellow Jacket, just to kind of get a better glimpse of that and to see maybe a little bit more of the interaction between him and either Paul Rudd or some of the other characters. But
I think most of his villainy was like off screen.
What's that?
I think most of his villainry was off screen.
Yeah, I get that, but like I said, that was just my initial reaction was, why did I have to wait so long to actually see Yellow Jacket in action? And maybe we could have benefited from a little more of that, but maybe it paid off at the end because you were waiting for it the whole time. I don't know. Dan, what did you think of him as a villain just in general?
I thought it was pretty much a letdown. It's seeming weird to say it letdown because I expected it to be pretty bad going in. I wasn't the biggest fan of the look of the character. It just seemed kind of generic a little bit, and it's almost like they took Obadiah Stane's plot in the first Iron Man movie and just made it even less developed. So
yeah, I've heard that connection from a couple of different people, but then I've also heard people say that this is like the best villain outside of Loki or the Winter Soldier, and I'm not seeing that.
No, I think Amanda said a lot of it does happen off screen. I think that too. I think maybe it's a little bit of a cop-out, but it does seem like this movie is kind of letting you know a lot has gone on before we get into this world. You know, there's a history here with these characters, and yeah, while that like justifies it, and you can kind of connect the dots, it doesn't make it nearly as fulfilling because these relationships that are supposed to be falling apart or supposed to be the focal point and what's propelling the movie forward. It's hard for me, I should say, to buy in because I'm just trying to basically fill in everything when I'm not really getting much of anything at all. It's not even like you're giving any dots to connect. You're just kind of just saying, hey, here's this guy and he's evil. So, and there's not many dimensions to him. But, I mean, I thought the performance was fine. Them waiting for him forever to get in the costume, that didn't bother me too much. I just thought they could have done. I was thinking, like, what? It seems like Marvel has to know that this is happening with their movies, that the villains are just underdeveloped? And is it simply just because do they not care that much? So they just feel like they want it more to be showcased for the heroes, so they just get a character that they can put in there to let the heroes be who they are? And because this is a character that's very much made for this movie. Yellow Jacket is a comic book character, but he's not really a villain. He's actually a name that Hank Pym takes at moments in time. So it's just like they're just getting a different version of the hero. So it's almost like, here's a character that we can make some cool action scenes with. And I think it works in that aspect, but as a character that's memorable, not at all.
And I think they are missing something, because, that's what elevated the Dark Knight series, was the villains. That's what, you could take the heroes that you've developed now and just like amp this whole thing up to a different level. And how many films are we up to now? We know most of the characters. I understand Ant-Man is a new one, but I can understand maybe with some of the initial films for some of these characters, but you better start paying off with your villains, especially when you get to the more collaborative films, because we know who the heroes are. We need something amped up by thinking that they're going against a formidable opponent, and hopefully they can start getting that right at some point. What did you think of Yellow Jacket, Amanda?
I think he was a little underused, and I don't necessarily think that the most of the villain stuff happening off screen was a great choice. I don't think that I bought the grand scale of what could happen if this technology got into the wrong hands based on what was happening with the villain. It seemed for a long time that they were like, oh, he doesn't know that I'm here, and I'm at your house, and I'm talking to you on the phone while I'm sitting right here next to the person I'm talking about. It seemed like some high school, blocked collar stuff. It didn't really seem like they were doing some grand scale espionage, especially with the amount of security that was happening, or taking place, as far as him getting a little insecure and doing what he did with all the security stuff. So I think that it didn't work very well. As far as being the next best to Loki, I don't think I agree with that either.
All right. Dan, anything else about Ant-Man you wanted to bring up before we give our grades?
I gotta say, though, I thought, we didn't really touch upon it, but I thought the action was really well choreographed, and they used the mechanic of him shrinking and really well. And I didn't anticipate the ants to be such a huge role in it, but I liked how they did use that power. And I think with a lot of the Marvel movies, a lot of the characters have very similar powers. It's a lot of punching, it's a lot of just explosions, but I think with Ant-Man, it allowed them to explore a lot of new worlds, and obviously people are going to make the connection to Edgar Wright because he had a lot of hands in this, and there's actually a sequence in this taken straight from his first test footage, and I think he would have gotten a better movie if Edgar Wright did direct, but I still think that the sequences that were in there were fun, enjoyable. They're not groundbreaking per se, but I just thought it was different enough that it made this one feel fresh compared to other movies.
Yeah, and I think, too, this would have been one that probably did benefit a little bit from the 3D. We don't go see films in 3D if we can possibly avoid it, but I could see how this one might be a little bit of fun in 3D with all the shrinking and enlarging and shooting around.
I'm kind of glad that we didn't, though, because I definitely would have gotten motion sick from that bathtub scene. Oh, man. I think one other thing that we didn't touch on was the technology that they use. I think with Iron Man, the technology is so huge and in your face and kind of on a next level kind of thing. And I think that this tech was mildly cool. You can tell that the Ant-Man suit was the original Ant-Man suit. It did look dated. It did look used and old. It didn't have that shiny new armor look or anything like that. And I think that the discs that he uses and all the stuff that they do kind of bring up about the suit, you're like, whoa, this is actually pretty legitimate. You're not going to go into some quantum realm in the Iron Man suit. You can just fly and stuff. But I think that some of how they presented the tech was pretty cool. Like I said before, though, they didn't bump up the stakes for me. I didn't feel like, oh my god, this technology is going to get out there and then we're all screwed. Kind of the same thing with the Avengers 2. I didn't really get the how high the stakes were. Oh, they got a city in there, they're going to drop it. You know, not a big deal. So
if you're not living in that city.
if you're not Sokovia, you're good to go. But I'm really excited to see the Wasp suit finished and see what kind of stuff they bring to the next few movies that they're going to be involved in.
What did you think of the character of Evangeline Lilly and the potential for that, Dan?
I liked her a lot. I mean, in a way, I wish we got a little bit more of her. It seems like that's going to happen. I thought her performance was really strong and one of the better female characters in Marvel. Perhaps she could have played a bigger role in some of the action sequences, but it seems like that's going to happen based upon what we're hearing. So right. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing her play that character. So.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Any other notes that you guys didn't get to yet, Amanda?
I don't think so.
Dan?
I just wanted to say that I did like the lore that they built in with Ant-Man and how there's a history to this character. And like Michael Douglas, I think, showed up and did a pretty good job. And I didn't think I'd buy him as a superhero, but I thought he works well as Hank Pym. And it was a smart choice, I think, because Hank Pym, if you look at the history of that character, he's not the most likable, relatable character. So making it Scott Lang, I think, was a smart choice. And also opens the door for a lot of possibilities within Marvel TV realm or movie realm, knowing that there was maybe some older Avengers in the 60s or something like that. So I thought that was a good choice and a good way to kind of build this universe without just adding another movie.
I thought that was a nice touch, and it just highlights another one of a actual pretty good performance from here, whether it's Paul Rudd or Michael Pena, Evangeline Lilly, or Michael Douglas. I think we got 4 real good performances there, and I agree. I think that is intriguing the way they kind of wove that in there, which kind of leads to the news story we skipped earlier about the sequence that was left out of the film involving Michael Douglas in the Ant-Man suit and doing what he was doing, and the potential that might turn into one of the Marvel one-shots. Is that something you'd be interested in seeing, Dan?
Oh, for sure. I think there's even, it'd be kind of hard, but I think there is potential for like a series there in some ways. I mean, it'd be maybe hard to do in TV, but I mean, we have The Flash and whatnot, but definitely would be interested in that.
I thought the reverse aging of Michael Douglas was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It is the same effects studio, or I don't know what you would call them, a studio or what, but they handled the making a skinny Steve Rogers and Captain America, the same people who did that, and I think that they did really well. I guess they watched a lot of his films from the 80s and really focused on everything, like, how his muscles move in his face when he talks, and they like added fat to his cheeks and color and all kinds of stuff. It was really cool.
There's nothing they can't do these days. All right, Dan, down to the nitty-gritty then. Where do you fall with Ant-Man as far as a grade? I
would give it a 7.5.
All right, 7.5 from Dan, positive score. Amanda, what about you?
Give it the same.
7.5 from Amanda. I will just be different slightly and give it a straight 7. So we're all on the positive boat for Ant-Man. I don't think... Do we want to get into Phase 2, Dan, or should we save that conversation for a later date?
I mean, I don't know. We could, if you want to say, give our ranking. I don't know if you want to do rankings real quick, or if that.
Or just where Ant-Man fits amongst Phase 2, maybe. Let's keep it simple.
Sure. It's to me right in the middle. Like I think honestly, I placed it above Avengers: Age of Ultron, but beneath Winter Soldier, Iron Man 3, which I know I'm probably very on the minority of liking. And
people are tweeting you right now.
Yeah, and Guardians. So, but I think it's right within that next echelon.
What about you, Amanda?
I put it above Iron Man 3, but below Age of Ultron, and below Guardians.
I liked it better than Age of Ultron.
Or what did I just say then? I want it above Age of Ultron and above Iron Man 3.
Okay.
But below Winter Soldier, Dark World, and Guardians.
All right, so some Thor love as you'll get from both of us. Yeah, I think I'd also put it above Age of Ultron, which is not something I would have said at the beginning of the year in any way, shape, or form. Ant-Man is better than Age of Ultron. I said it. That's what happened. And I would also put it probably just slightly ahead of Iron Man 3, but I like Iron Man 3 as well, but I will put it below Captain America the Winter Soldier and below Guardians of the Galaxy and probably slightly below Thor the Dark World, because Amanda and I are in the minority and we love all the Thor films.
So your list is my list exactly.
Yes, pretty much. I should have just said ditto. My bad. All right. Let us know what you think of Ant-Man, what score you would give it, and we'll get into a question probably involving what we were just talking about a little bit later, but let's get into what we've been watching quick. And Dan, why don't you start? What have you been watching this last week? What's one of them?
I have not seen a lot, so I have seen my homework in 2 other films, and 2 documentaries, actually, which I don't have a huge amount to say about, so I'll just touch upon it quickly. I saw the documentary Merchants of Doubt, which is a documentary that focuses on basically lobbyists and, well, mostly how doubt is used in different political debates to when maybe other options are not as when things like logic and facts are kind of get in the way. But what it does is it kind of looks at how cigarettes were debated and makes a correlation between that and kind of climate change and things like that. Just the mechanics and the machine of the political machine and how people and the extent people go to get proof points and kind of the craziness that ensues. And it's actually really just fascinating and very depressing when you look at it, just because it's like it's so much is done on both sides just to fill the machine and not really fix problems. So I ended up really liking it. I thought it's not necessarily telling us anything we didn't really know, but I think it does get into some really good investigating journalism into just who are these people that are paying these lobbyists, and who are these lobbyists who are going on these news shows, and where are these opinions coming from, and what are their motivations. And I thought that was pretty solid on that end.
And what was the other documentary you saw? The
other documentary I saw was Sheik, and about Iron Sheik in any wrestling.
Nice.
Yes. Currently streaming on Netflix. And yes, Iron Sheik is kind of becoming this Twitter sensation. It's following his life. And I didn't know what this would be like going in, but it's actually, because it starts off as kind of a serious documentary, getting into his early life living in Iran, being an Olympic wrestler, and how he comes to America and his life story. And it's not, I would say, well-made documentary. It's very immature-ish. I question some of the legitimacy in certain scenes, and I think the overall that the structure makes a little sense. You think you're in one time period, but then you ended up being present day. It's kind of, I got lost a little bit here and there when just the sequence of events. But I think, though, the Sheik is a very interesting figure, and his life is actually really fascinating when you get into it. I think the one thing it's missing, like I said, it's just not particularly well made, and also since it's not sponsored by or done by WWE, they don't have a lot of the archival footage, and so you end up talking about all these things without actually seeing them, and they try to get around with it with different like animated vignettes and things like that, but I think it would have made it a little bit stronger. And then at the end, it's probably maybe its best, it gets the best material where it kind of gets into what he's become at this point. So it's enjoyable. It's if you have any interest in Iron Sheik, I would say check it out. I would give that basically a 6 out of 10. Merchants of Death probably similar to 7.5 out of 10.
Okay. I know Iron Sheik definitely has some entertaining interviews on YouTube out there.
Yeah, and it gets into that and where that came from, which was kind of cool to see. I don't know. He's such a strange dude.
He is. Definitely a strange dude. I might have to check that one out. Amanda, did you see any films without me this week like normal?
Yes, I had a rewatch. I rewatched Perfect Stranger from 2007 with Halle Berry, Bruce Willis, and Giovanni Ribisi. Dan, have you seen this?
I have not. I have not even heard of it, honestly. When you hear Perfect Strangers, I think of the TGIF show.
No, I think this was actually a pretty intriguing film. Some really great performances out of all three of them. Bruce Willis just plays this rich hornball that doing a lot of things behind his wife's back, and he can get away with a lot because he has a company and his wife's money, and Halle Berry plays a investigative journalist trying to kind of crack open some mystery that I won't touch upon, so you guys will be just as intrigued to see the movie. But Giovanni Ribisi, as always, gives a bang of performance. He is such a freaking creep in almost everything that he does, and it works for him. There was a line that Bruce Willis delivers that I thought was pretty powerful, and he says his father told him that sincerity is everything, and once you learn how to fake that, the rest is easy. And I'm like, that is so true. So true. That's how you deal with people. You act like you are sincere. Like, it really means something to you. So there's some good stuff that comes out of this film. I thought it was pretty fun. Some of the back and forth between Bruce Willis and Halle Berry is a little ridiculous. You saw some of that, right, Kevin?
Just a bit.
But I think it was a cool film. You should check it out.
What kind of grade would you give it?
I would give it a B-. So let's say
You're never allowed to guest on In Session again.
I would just say let's give it a 6. It's in the middle of the road.
All right, and we only saw 2 other ones together, and that would be the first one would be Get Hard from earlier this year, because we wanted to make the ultimate 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon almost like connection here, because we watched Get Hard, which has T.I. in it, and also deals with Will Ferrell possibly going to San Quentin prison. And then the next day we watch Ant-Man, where he's in San Quentin, and T.I. also shows up. So
I was like, hey, those outfits look familiar. Prison garb.
So yeah, we did that intentionally, we'll say.
And then we also watched Perks of a Wallflower with Paul Rudd.
Well, yeah, but we'll get... Oh, yeah, and then Paul Rudd was in that, too. So we had all kinds of connections going everywhere this weekend. So we'll save that one for a minute. But as far as Get Hard goes, for me, that was disappointing. I thought it would be funnier. I just didn't think it had the punch that it needed, and it didn't have enough laughs throughout. So, I don't know, something about a lot of comedies these days that just are not working for me. I think there's a couple funny moments here and there, but not enough for me to give this one a very good score. I don't know, Amanda, did you like this one better than me?
I probably liked it a little bit better than you. I'm not really sure. I don't think it was his best film, but I think it was fun to see Kevin Hart and Will Ferrell actually interacting, and I think that it did have a few laughs that worked for it.
For me, I don't need to go into it too much. I'll give this one a 4 out of 10. Where do you stand?
I'll give it a 5.
All right, so not overwhelming scores for Get Hard. I don't think that will surprise anybody. And then, like I mentioned on Twitter a few times, we had some advanced screening tickets to go see Southpaw for free the other day before it was released nationally. So we got to see Southpaw. We'll try to keep spoilers to a very few or none. But, of course, this is one of them where if you've seen the trailer, a big part of the storyline has been spoiled for you, so I don't know about that choice. Luckily, it does come somewhat towards the beginning of the film, which I think will be a relief to some people, but I still think that would have been much more effective had it not been in the trailer. Amanda, what was your overall experience as far as the theater experience and your initial reaction to Southpaw?
I think that our theater experience really, really bumped up how much I enjoyed the film. People were clapping, people were laughing, or people.
I think every emotion was had during this film. There was crying, laughing, clapping.
There was a ton of stuff going on. I myself got the straight feels a couple times. I was crying a little bit. It happened. But I think that as far as the film overall, I think there's a couple of things that I had problems with. As far as the direction went, but the performance of Jake Gyllenhaal blew my mind.
Jake Gyllenhaal is absolutely insane as an actor.
He's so great in this film. Definitely, I wouldn't say too far removed from Brokeback Mountain almost. I get the same kind of, when he does like a manly man thing, I feel like it kind of relates back to that. But he's jacked, and like the training sequences, like that's why when we left the theater and I literally told Kevin, we're going home and we're going to the gym. I wanted to do some cardio so bad after watching this movie. I made Kevin come home and put his gym clothes on, and we went to the gym at 9:30 at night, right after seeing this movie, because I was ready. It was good.
He's just crazy in this film at some points. He's a whole different range of people. I'm just saying that right now. Like when we get to our top 10 actors of the decade so far, there's no way Jake Gyllenhaal is not being mentioned in that discussion somewhere along the line. Whether he's on people's list or not, he will come up at some point during that discussion, because this guy is just on a roll, and this is another phenomenal performance by him. Not to overlook the performance by Forrest Whitaker, who for me sometimes is a little bit more hit and miss, and I think he was on top of his game in this film as well. I will agree though that there is some missteps here by the director, and I think they missed a big opportunity. This film, in probably the final act, could have elevated itself. It could have become one of the most talked about films, or maybe top 10 material for the year, and instead I think it fell into some typical sport film tropes, for lack of a better term.
It could have completely bypassed that cliche that it fell into.
Right. And I just think it wasn't necessary. I think there was a bunch of different ways that it could have gone towards the end, that it didn't necessarily have to choose the standard way it went. But that does not take away from the performances, from the emotion throughout this film. And it's definitely one... I mean, now that I've had a little bit of time to settle on it, I'm finding a few more things that I didn't like about it. But my initial reaction was that is one of the most fun experiences in the theater we've had all year. Whether it's one of the best films or not, it was definitely one of the better experiences. And like I said, it has a whole range of emotions. My initial reaction for this one would be it's one of the best films I've seen this year. It's gone down a little bit since then, but I definitely recommend people seeing this film, especially if they like sports films or boxing or Jake Gyllenhaal or anything like that. So for a grade for you, Amanda, what would you give Southpaw?
I would give this one another 7.5.
All right, so we're on the 7.5 train. I will give this one an 8, but I will reserve the right to shrink that down as I keep digesting it a little bit further. I think it would have been an 8 or higher if it had just done a little bit different things at the end. I think it has the potential to kind of drop down into that 7 range once all is said and done, but definitely worth a watch.
I think it might have been better than a couple Rocky movies.
I think so too. All right, Dan, getting into your homework. How was Blue is the Warmest Color?
I got to thank you, because I've been this has been on my queue forever, and I've not. It's just haven't.
You're thanking me for this.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, now I have to watch it. But Blue is the Warmest Color. It's been talked about forever, and it's not really much new I really have to add to it, except to kind of agree that the two lead performers in this are fantastic. They are what make the movie, and again, a lot of it's unspoken dialogue. It's just they just have a presence about them that is phenomenal, and I think they won the Palme d'Or just based upon their work in this, and I think it's well deserved. And the accolades that were labeled upon them were legitimate. The story itself is it does coming of age relationship story really well. The one thing I think that hinders it from being one of the best movies of the decade so far for me is that I do feel at times it does get indulgent, and this is a 3-hour movie, and I hate commenting on runtime, but I think in some instances I feel this is just as guilty as an Avengers film for being indulgent within the action. I feel like this movie did not need it. At times I was just wondering okay, what are we doing here? Is it legitimately need to be this long, or is this a director who just doesn't know how to make a cut or two? And that's kind of the feeling I had. And the other thing too is that there are a lot of sex scenes in this, and which are fine, but I think they are just gratuitous to a point, and unnecessarily gratuitous. I didn't really feel like it was necessary to go to the length it does, and it felt like it was fetishizing upon it, like in an uncomfortable setting, and maybe I'm just becoming old. I don't know. But and I also want to, if I was in the theater, if the aspect of the runtime wouldn't matter as much as I'm, watching this late at night, and I'm just like 3 hours are really hard to come by, and I'm like, oh god, I still got 2 hours left, and I'm only an hour in. So I'll say that. But I do think it is a wonderful movie, and it's deserved. As I would say, if you're going to make a best list of the decade so far, it's one that should at least be watched. I'm not saying it's going to make it for sure, but there are a lot of elements in this that I think are just movies at their finest, and just some of the small issues I had. So overall, I would give it a 9 out of 10, and possibly in a we watch, and possibly allowing it to digest, or if I had the opportunity to see it within a theater where I feel like maybe that runtime wouldn't have a big enough issue on me, I maybe would enjoy it a little bit more.
All right, definitely a good score there for Blue is the Warmest Color. Interesting for us for Perks of Being a Wallflower is that we literally just finished the film before the record. And
is that your like framing right before the final type of stuff?
Yes. and the reason I bring that up is because we actually haven't even discussed with each other on our feelings on Perks of Being a Wallflower. So I'm interested to hear from Amanda first. So what did you think about this film? First of all, when the opening credits started, I got to hear all kinds of backlash of, is this an independent film? Blah, 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 blah. I hate all these films because we're still trying to break her from that mold. So now, after seeing the film, Amanda, what do you think of Perks of Being a Wallflower?
I was pleasantly surprised with how much I liked the film. I think that some of the look of the film got a touch artsy, but I don't think that it was too out of my wheelhouse from what I like. I think that I don't really think that I got a coming of age feel from this. I think he was more just getting through a really difficult point in his life and coming into his own as far as how he deals with the issues that he's dealt with, not just necessarily life in general. I feel like he has some serious obstacles to overcome that aren't normal coming of age type stuff. I was intrigued with trying to find out and figure out more about, his name is Charlie, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know what was going on with him and Charlie, and I like that you're not seeing everything that happened to him to cause what's going on with him, his own internal struggles. You don't see that explicitly. You're trying to figure that out. You're getting pieces the whole time, and you're seeing how it's affecting him and his life in the now. And I still have no idea really what was wrong with him. I feel like there was a lot of really great relationships that played out, and I think some of the characters, though, were a little exaggerated, a little too, I don't know, it was like you're getting beat over the head with the type of cliche high school kid that they were, almost. Not necessarily like, even like there's the jock kid who has to put on this facade for his parents and not be who he is on the inside, and who is a homosexual and wants to be with another man, but he can't, so he puts on this big show for everybody in his school and his parents. And you see just some of the other kids. Okay, let's touch on like Charlie. I think he was really exaggerated because he's like, oh, I didn't think anybody noticed me, or even if he felt that way, I don't feel like somebody would say that. So I feel like there were some character aspects that were super exaggerated, but I think overall I find that the building of the relationships worked for me. There's a ton of stuff. I don't want to take up all their time.
Well, just touching on the character part, I'm going to have to disagree with you big time about the exaggeration. I didn't get that at all. I think one of the things I liked about this film the most is that none of them did fit the stereotypical view of what a jock is typically portrayed as, or what any type of classification you want. I thought none of them fit into that mold, and that's what found it interesting. And
how do they not fit in any mold?
because he's not the typical jock, because he is, in this case, a homosexual that's hiding that. So
but
it doesn't
his
fit
actions that he has on the outside of what he feels on what he's feeling emotionally and
I'm just saying if you're taking like typical high school
thing.
films, he doesn't fit into the typical jock role that you
How
might see in some of them.
many times has there been a jock that's secretly gay in movies?
I don't know if I've ever.
What? It happens.
Okay, you've apparently seen a lot more high school films than I have, but I didn't think any of them necessarily fit into their prototypical, stereotypical classification, even though that's something that you can't avoid in high school, because high school is about that in some respects. I mean, there are all the classifications, there are all the cliques.
No, I avoided all that. I wasn't in any cliques.
But I'm just saying they all existed in your school, did they not?
Not like your small little Pecatonica school.
Okay.
We had a lot more diversity.
Well, of course you did when there's 10 times as many people. But even Logan Lerman, I don't agree with what you're saying. I think there are a lot of people like that. I think I was like that in high school for a long period of time, and I'm not quite sure.
Oh, some people noticed me. Somebody saw me, and just doing.
I mean, I didn't
all
say
this
stuff like that, but I can definitely picture people. As a teacher, I've seen multiple examples of people exactly like that. So I don't think that's out of the norm.
That seems really weird, just to blurt something out like that, or to act like he did.
When you're going through stuff, there's a lot of stuff that comes out like that. And we'll have to talk off air, because I don't want to ruin this for anybody that hasn't seen it, but I'm a little bit confused as to your statement of not knowing what he was going through, because that's revealed at the end of the film. So we'll have to discuss that.
They don't ever say specifically what he's like. It's getting bad again. It's getting bad again. I was bad again. That's what he keeps saying, but he doesn't exactly say like. Does he have an anxiety disorder now? Does he have some kind of personality disorder that we don't know about?
Basically PTSD from what he experienced as a child, and they go into that when they go into the facility at the end.
They don't exactly say what happened.
Yeah, they do. I guess you have to read in the lines, between the lines a little bit, but
I said, they don't put it out there explicitly, do they?
I like that about that, and I liked almost everything about this film, actually. And I've never seen... I don't know if I've ever seen... Dan, what else has Logan Lerman been in?
Logan Lerman?
Percy Jackson?
Besides Percy Jackson.
He was in... Logan Lerman, he was in Fury, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
he was in Noah.
Yeah, I definitely remember. I remember that now, and I'm placing him in that. But I thought he was amazing. I thought he was amazing in this. I thought Emma Watson was amazing in this. The guy that plays her stepbrother or her half brother, yeah, he was absolutely insane, but doing a great performance. So I thought the performances were great. I thought the pacing was great. I can see what you're saying with the coming of age, that maybe part coming of age, but part also just getting through an experience that you had and kind of coming to terms with your identity in that respect, where it wouldn't necessarily have to have been anything about the age thing, even though it is kind of set in that type of environment. But yeah, I enjoyed this film a ton, and I'm very glad I watched it, because I didn't really know much about it, but maybe I'm just a sucker for this type of genre and this type of film, and the kind of the stuff that it's talking about. But I think it has a personal connection to me, because I went through things like a lot of people have. I'm not trying to say I'm unique for that, but I went through my own traumatic things growing up and going through school, and definitely had to deal with the aspect of finding your way and finding whether you fit in or don't fit in or feel like an oddball as you go through those different things, and not necessarily like the level of what he's going through, but in a different way. And what other notes did you have, Amanda, that you wanted to bring up about Perks of the Wallflower before we give our grade for it?
I thought it was really nice of Hermione to get out of Hogwarts and come do something else. I thought that was really brave of her. But I think it had some really great scenes in it. I don't know what the hell was up with the Rocky Horror Picture lip sync show they did. I don't know what was going on there.
I don't know if the parents knew that was going on. That's all.
I don't know where their parents were a lot of the time. I think they're pretty oblivious. But also, like, the sister played by Nina Dobrev, I think she was, like, probably one of the weakest characters for me. I think it
represented another aspect of different things that people are going through maybe at that time, but yeah, I agree.
Well, honestly, that's what this entire movie is about, Kevin, is everybody going through their own stuff. So I'm not saying that that's off topic here. I'm just saying her character, what she did and what she was going through. I didn't really care for.
I can see that. What grade would you give Perks of Being a Wallflower?
I'll give it a 6.5.
6.5 out of 10. The only other thing I'll mention before my grade is I love Paul Rudd in this as well, with the connection to Ant-Man, obviously, but I loved his character, and I love the interaction between him and Logan Lerman as the whole teacher thing went. I'm going to be much higher than you on this one. I'll give this one a 9 out of 10. I think this is definitely worth talking about. Like Dan said, I don't know if it's in the or if it's going to make any lists as far as top of the decade, but I think it's definitely something that you should watch in preparation for that. So I'll give it a 9 out of 10. Dan, where did you stand on this one?
I was about the same. I think 8.5, 8-ish range. I just remember really liking the characters. I can kind of see where maybe some of them fit in certain archetypes, but I would say when this came out in 2012, even though it's not that long ago, some of the things it was getting into, especially since this was a story from the 90s and one, I believe that's, based upon a novel that's based upon the guy's real life, that it felt very authentic to me. So even if some of the stories do felt familiar or do kind of fall in line with things we've seen before, I thought at least there was it came from a genuine place, and I thought the performances overall were all really great. So,
all right, so both very positive. 2 scores for 9s out of our homework, and a 6.5 is not too bad. Any homework for next week, Dan?
Well, we're getting into a comedy list coming up relatively shortly, so I was trying to find a comedy film that was streaming that was quite good, and there isn't a bunch, but I came across one that maybe it's not. Well, we'll see. We'll see what you think of it. I would say it's a short, easy watch, and it's. I don't think you've seen this, but correct me if I'm wrong. Starring Steve Coogan, and that's The Trip.
I have not seen that.
All right.
Have you seen that, Amanda? Nope.
All right. Yeah, it's currently streaming, and it's The Trip, not The Trip from Italy, which is the sequel to it. It was actually in BBC. It was a TV series, but in America it was cut down to a film, and it's really just Steve Coogan and I forget the other guy's name, who are just 2 comedians going around England to different restaurants, eating and doing impressions. It's a very basic film, but I'm curious to hear what you think about it. Just because there's really not much else comedy-wise on Netflix that falls into this last decade, so...
Yeah, I wanted to do the same thing for you, Dan, but I had to bypass that and think about some of the other lists that we had out still to go, drama being one of them. I didn't really get into the action, but there's a few drama choices, but I promised you a few weeks ago that I was going to get to your level and be as well prepared as you were for a few weeks and give you some choices. So I have 4 choices for you, and they all have a theme, and the theme is that on Rotten Tomatoes, they're all films from this decade so far, and they're all films that, as far as critics go on Rotten Tomatoes, they're in the 90 range, most of them 95 or higher, with one exception, I think it's at a 92, but as far as an audience rating, they're all in the 70s, or one of them I think is in the 50s. So I'm going to give you the genre and let you pick, but one of them is a art house horror film.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is a dramedy, I guess you could say, part comedy, part drama, so maybe it would work for the comedy list. Then we have a mystery suspense film, and then we just have a straight drama film. Where do you want to go?
Oh, wow, that's you know what, the art house horror has me interested, so I'll go with that one.
All right, and hopefully you haven't seen it. I checked your list and it wasn't on there, but maybe you've seen it in the last year. But I'm going to 2012, and the description does not sound super intriguing, but like I said, it has a 98% critic rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a 74% audience rating. The description says Lola Stone and Brent Mitchell asked Brent Mitchell to the prom, but Brent said no, and now he's screwed. What happens when Lola doesn't get what she wants? And I won't go any further than that, but the name of it is The Loved Ones.
Interesting. I have not seen that.
And it's from 2012. Like I said, it has a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, so I'm interested to see. I haven't seen it, so you will be the guinea pig for us. But strong bloody violence and some language and drug and alcohol use, I guess, in this. But art house horror film for you, The Loved Ones.
Alrighty.
So we'll see what you think about that one, and we will watch The Trip, and we'll
meet back next time to talk about that. But before we close out the show, we want to just real quick talk about what's coming out for everybody, obviously in theaters like we talked about. Pixels, Southpaw, Paper Towns, from The Fault in Our Stars author, and The Vatican Tapes, which stars Michael Pena and Damon Hansu, the horror suspense film, as well as some limited and video on demand releases. How about this one, American Heist, starring Adrian Brody and Hayden Christensen. The thriller there. We got a film called Phoenix, which is a World War II drama about a concentration camp survivor who I think gets a new face or a new identity in a way, as well as some other ones that we will have in the post, including Unexpected, the Colby Smulders film about the teacher and student that are both pregnant and dealing with that at the same time. And, of course, the Blu-ray DVD releases, one I'm definitely looking forward to this next Tuesday, and one I'm sure Amanda is definitely looking forward to, maybe a rewatch. That would be Home. You love that animated film from earlier in the year. And then the other film would be The Water Diviner. So I'm looking forward to finally having a chance to see that. Out of all of that, Dan, which one are you most excited for?
I'm actually intrigued with The Water Diviner, it being Russell Crowe's first directorial film. So I think that's one that I will definitely check out.
What about you, Amanda? Anything that strikes your fancy there?
I'm definitely interested in a rewatch of Home.
All right. I haven't seen Home yet, so I'll definitely add that to the list. But I'm like Dan, I'm going to pick Water Diviner only because I've already seen Southpaw, so I don't need to worry about that one. So I would definitely am checking out Water Diviner this week. So, as for our question for this week, I just wanted to go right back to the Ant-Man discussion. I know a lot of people have been doing it on Twitter or other social media, so the listeners of the show, give us your feedback as far as where Ant-Man falls in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You can rank it in the Phase 2, or you can rank it in the whole Cinematic Universe, but where do you think Ant-Man falls in that list? Also want to take a quick chance to let everybody know about, obviously, the other series that Dan and I are doing currently with our Quentin Tarantino retrospective. We've done episodes on his first few films, Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, and by the time this airs, we'll just be a few days away from the Kill Bill release, both Volumes 1 and Volume 2, so definitely check those out and let us know if you like what we're doing with that, because there's definitely a potential for us to do more of these in the future. So, anything else that I didn't get to say, Amanda, that you want to get out before we close out the show?
Not really, no. I'm excited for one of our next shows coming up, time capsule-wise.
Yeah, we got some special stuff coming out, and that reminds me of what we have coming out next week, which Dan kind of touched on it a little bit. We will be going into one of our other top 10 lists that we've been doing throughout the year, so it's time for our July addition to that, and that will be the top 10 comedy films, which will be the next entry there for 2010 to 2014. So definitely looking forward to that. I have to do some last-minute research and finalize my list. Dan, how are you feeling about your list so far?
Yeah, that's it's hard. It's hard because comedy's so hard to define.
Yeah. It'll definitely be an interesting conversation, and we'll have a special guest with us for that episode as well. So that will be what you'll be hearing next time. And then we have something else I'm very much looking forward to after that. I'm not going to reveal it quite yet, but it has to do with a time capsule, and that'll be a fun episode in 2 weeks. So definitely some fun stuff for you guys to check out. Dan, anything else that you want to let people know about before we close out?
No, I'm good.
All right, and as always, if you like Dan, definitely check out Talking in Circles, his other podcast, because that's definitely a fun listen to every Tuesday. So thanks, as always, for tuning in to the Cinema Geeks this week. You can call the voicemail line and leave us a message, 502-526-5821. You can visit the Facebook page by searching Geekcast Radio Network. Obviously, the best way to interact with us as far as the show goes is visiting the website, geekcastradio.com, and then clicking on the different episode posts and leaving your comments. We've got a lot of great comments there, so join the discussion there. And then, of course, there's Twitter, and the show name there is Cinema Geekcast. Dan, what is your Twitter?
I am at Movie Revolt.
Amanda?
Hard Candy Mandy, eyes, no eyes.
And I am at Optimus Solo. And that is it for us for this week. Be sure to tune in next time for another chance to listen to the Cinema Geeks.